Right now, there is a phenomenon going on in the AI space where businesses are constantly misdiagnosing either themselves or they're being misdiagnosed when it comes to implementing AI into their business. I'm sure you've seen, companies like Salesforce, companies like Uber, all of these big companies, and it happens on the small scale, but also at the largest scale. All of these companies are spending all of this money to implement AI, and they're redefining their entire business infrastructure, and they're laying off people, and they're just pouring in money to implement AI. Now that it has been a couple of months, it's been, coming up on like a year since these companies have done what they did with AI. They implemented it in whatever the capacity they did. Because they're at such a large scale, they have longer feedback loop. And what's happening is they're actually seeing right now that they've completely blown through their budgets. They've completely not received the ROI that they were anticipating from what they did with AI. Now, caveat is, I don't know how efficient they were. All of these bureaucratic large scale companies, they're never really efficient. They probably didn't diagnose things quickly, but at the end of the day, these are huge companies. So I'm not sure how their exact process was and what they were implementing AI to do, and their use cases that they were solving for. I haven't looked too deep into it. However, what I have looked deeply into is the people that I've actually been talking to, the business owners. Through my company, AI Drivers, myself and my co-founder, we started this company early 2026. Prior to that, we both ran our own separate successful marketing agencies. We now work together and implement agentic infrastructure, agentic solutions into businesses. What are the top 2 highest priority things? Like, when we boil everything down, let's digest everything that's currently going on in this business and let's boil it down to the top 2 highest priority action items, the highest ROI, or like the biggest time savers that we can solve for. We implement that, we get that working. Only focusing on 2 allows us to not take too much time, usually within say 2 weeks, 1 week, depending on the scope. We implement the infrastructure, let it run, let the business owner actually reap the benefits and see it work in real time. And then we go through and further, obviously if the business owner wants to, and even go as far as completely restructuring an entire business. Again, depending on what they're looking for, depending on how the business currently looks, we have to properly diagnose these businesses on the front end. We get on these audits, these diagnoses are very in-depth, a singular 2 calls, like the initiate the audit and then a secondary call after the audit's done. In that time frame, could be a day if it's simple. If it's a super big business, it could even be like 3 days that we're talking to everyone on the team. We're seeing how all the processes were run. We map everything out essentially. Well, we were doing an audit, a diagnosis for this real estate company. They reached out to us. They wanted to completely adopt AI. We want all these AI agents. We want to completely be leveraging AI to its fullest capacity, its fullest capabilities. And it all sounds great, right? Essentially, long story short, we initiate the audit and we go through their entire company. We understand exactly how their workflows operate. We went in and analyzed exactly their internal processes, how the communication structure is between the top of the business and how it disperses to the rest of the team, reviewing how their team is following the SOPs that they have, everything. We wanted to have a full 360 understanding of this business. And after doing so, we uncovered a serious issue. Now, this was the first time we had encountered it. What we realized was this business is not in the proper position to fully adopt AI at the capacity that they wanted to adopt AI. I'm talking, they wanted agents, they wanted this full thing. Agents, this buzzword, right? That was a sign in of itself that they're just throwing around this term. Yeah, we want an AI agent for this, we want these AI agents, and not everything needs to be an agent. There's a difference between an agent and a skill, depending on like the actual application, depending on the use case. Not everything needs to actually be an agent. Most people can't even define what an agent actually is. So we saw their SOPs were trash. Not only were their SOPs trash, they had an extreme lack of SOPs. Their team communication wasn't terrible, but it was disorganized and it could have been improved significantly. They weren't using a CRM. They weren't tracking their lead gen. They weren't even tracking their overall numbers. All they would track was basic business expenses like your P&L. They wouldn't track any other analytics, whether that's money related, whether that's marketing related, whatever it is. They weren't tracking anything else. They weren't running ads. So it's not like, obviously if you're running ads and you're not tracking your numbers, that's terrible, but they're not running ads. However, for their lead gen that they were doing, 1, they didn't even have the best systems. 2, they weren't tracking what they were doing. Point is, I'm not trying to just bash on this company. The point I'm I'm trying to make is we had to sit them down at the end of our audit and explain to them, hey, you're not ready to adopt AI at the scale that you want to adopt AI. After reviewing your entire situation, we've realized that you will actually see a significant ROI from simply building a CRM and actually using a CRM. You would have a significant ROI from actually implementing better lead gen strategies, but just tracking your lead gen, making SOPs for your employees so they know what to do, improving your team's overall communication. There's all of these things that have nothing to do with AI that if they implement, then they're gonna get their ROI. I mean, we can do that for businesses. We actually offered to do it for this business, but they didn't see the importance. They didn't see the importance of all these other things. Like, they knew they needed a CRM, they knew they needed SOPs, but they were in the frame that they could bypass that with AI. Bring on a team of AI agents that can make the SOPs for them, or that can just do everything for them. In that case, they misdiagnose themselves. A lot of the other times, businesses are coming in and they don't know too much and they're asking questions, and people will misdiagnose the business and tell them that they need things that they actually don't. Now, I wouldn't say this was the first of many experiences, but it definitely was a circumstance that we came across from then on, right? We talked to these businesses, or completely externally, like I would just see from afar and observe, you know, maybe it's through a story that a business owner was telling me or whatever it is. We would see these cases where they weren't using AI for really anything. They weren't actually using AI to make them more money. And now we're seeing, you know, when you're just looking at different news, you're seeing that this is happening at the largest scale. We're talking Uber, we're talking Salesforce, we're talking, I don't even know, all these other companies that have done the same thing where they implemented AI into the complete wrong sectors, clearly. For example, I forget the company, it was a large company, but they implemented AI for their customer service, their customer support. Now, this company had e-commerce store where people are asking about their orders. They just need basic level thing. It was something that's more subjective. There's more critical thinking in these customer support conversations. And they literally replaced all of their customer support reps with AI. Long story short, they are now hiring for customer support reps. Now, yes, these businesses generally are going to obviously have things like CRMs and have their data tracked, and they have data engineers, they have these big teams. So I'm not focusing too much on these big companies, but for example, this real estate company or these other businesses we've encountered, they know they need to implement SOPs. They know they need to be using basic like automations, basic Zapier style automations that don't require too much AI, just simple stuff. You know, their lead gen, they need to be tracking all this stuff. You know, they know these things, and everyone procrastinates these things historically, right? Everyone pushes these things off. And now with AI, people are looking at AI or AI agents as a mitigation to all of this. It's like a miracle pill. They can just, we can just adopt AI and, you know, maybe we don't need a CRM. The AI will build the CRM, or the AI will make the SOPs of our company. When you implement AI into a business, you need to have data to train it on. If it's not trained on anything, it's going to be useless. It's going to be the same as any, you know, LLM like ChatGPT or Claude or something. It's not going to be configured for your business. You need to truly understand the exact processes where you're injecting AI in whatever capacity that is. Like I said, it may be something that's an agent that's doing recurring work, whether that's on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis or on a daily basis, or maybe it's triggered by some sort of action that took place, or it could just be a skill. It could just be ingesting information and just displaying information. There's a whole bunch of different use cases for AI depending on the process that you are applying the AI to. You need to have a proper understanding of what you are implementing, essentially, is what I'm saying. Along with that, you need to have the data to train the AI. You need to have the numbers. You need to have all of the meeting transcripts of just different people on the team having these talks about the business. You need to have all of the SOPs that were created by people for the company, not asking AI to make an SOP for you. They need to be trained on the SOPs that is a source of truth. Long story short, here's the umbrella term. AI needs to be trained on source of truth material. Source of truth material can look like the examples I just mentioned or anything else. Who knows what that is, right? So why does this matter to you? If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you own a business or you're starting a business, but most of you probably already run a business. And if you're watching this video, you might be thinking about how can I implement AI for my business? And let me tell you, First, you want to audit your actual processes, where your bottlenecks are. Where can you lift a lever? Where can you see a significant savings of time or a significant cost reduction in terms of expenses, business expenses? That also kind of translates to just an ROI in general, something that helps drive revenue for the company. All right, think about the implications of this. You don't need to be a wizard about AI to just understand AI is like hiring on a new employee. You're not going to just dump a heap of information that's just scattered and disorganized into a new employee and just say, all right, go work. That's not how it works. AI operates the same way. Now, the difference between AI and an actual employee, if we're talking about an AI agent, is it works all the time. It doesn't complain. It's not going to do things that you tell it not to do. If it messes up, you correct it once and it never does that again. That's how it's supposed to be. So when you have identified these processes that you would like to implement AI into, think about the implications of what is actually involved, what sort of information is involved in this. If team members does this workflow or this process flow through, the reason why you need to do this is because the AI needs to be trained on the corresponding data. It needs to have that stuff aware. That's the second thing you need to do. Do I have this data readily available? Have I been storing data? And when I say data, I'm not just saying numbers, right? This can be transcripts, this can be financial numbers or marketing related like analytical style. This can be SOPs, etc. Do you have that available? Do you have that corresponding to the task or the workflow that you're trying to implement AI? Do you have the implicated data or implied data? I don't know which the correct term is. Do you have that data readily available? If you don't have that data readily available, are you able to backfill it? This has already happened, but can you retrieve the data from somewhere? If you already have the data, perfect, AI can actually work with it. Now, let's say you can't backfill the data. Then you need to go about conducting your business while being aware of that you are trying to gain data. So when you are having a meeting, if you're not using note takers on every single Zoom or Google Meet, use a note taker. I like to use Fathom. There's Otter, there is Google has a transcriber, there's Firefly. There's a bunch of these different note takers. I personally like Fathom. You should be using a note taker. You should have transcripts of every single meeting that takes place. If your team is having a meeting that you're not on, they should have their own note takers. Everyone on your team should have a note taker so all of that data can be stored. If you need to be tracking numbers, start tracking those numbers. Long story short, all I'm saying is before you implement AI, you need to properly diagnose the issue. Once you properly diagnose the issue, you need to identify if you have the corresponding data that is needed for an AI to operate at an effective level to complete the task that you want AI to complete or to mitigate the workflow that you're wanting AI to do. Once those two things are done, that's step one and step two. Then you go and you actually start implementing AI and you actually start mapping out all this stuff and training these things and really adopting the AI or having someone else implement the infrastructure for you. If you don't do this, you're gonna waste time, you're gonna waste money, and after you wasted time and after you wasted your money, your AI is not going to be doing what you wanted it to originally do. Long story short, you don't wanna have that scenario play out. You don't want to live in that reality. If you'd simply take the time to properly diagnose what's going on and take the time to just understand a kind of a baseline level of AI and how it works for business application, there is an endless amount of videos of AI use cases that have nothing to do with business. They aren't income driving use cases. You need to understand using AI specifically for business. I hope that makes sense. I just wanted to kind of give a PSA because this is something I've been seeing. A lot of people are just thinking that AI can just solve all of their problems, but if you have core foundational problems, that don't need to be solved. So AI can't run on a terrible system, neither can a human. AI is an employee. You're not gonna just have a new employee on the first day of the job, they're just doing everything, you just dump all this information. A lot of these different things, right? I don't wanna keep it too long. I hope this was value. If you had any questions or you needed more clarity on anything I said, feel free to comment below. I will respond to literally all of them, or hit me up on Instagram. I will see you guys in the next one. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.